The term bust has come up many times within NBA circles the past few years. Players like Anthony Bennett, Marvin Bagley, Markelle Fultz, and even Ben Simmons have been associated with the term bust only a few years into their careers for one reason or another. For Fultz, it has been injuries. For others, such as Bennett, it is due to people overhyping him coming into the draft and he just did not live up to the expectations analysts and fans placed on him. One thing that these guys all have in common is that they had sky-high potential but just never lived up to it. Sometimes being a bust doesn't mean that you don't have talent, but that it wasn't utilized or taken advantage of properly by an organization and the player, or it can be due to injuries. Looking back on a guy like Greg Oden and Brandon Roy back in the 2000s with the Portland Trailblazers, both of those guys had a ton of talent, and I think that they could have been incredible players, but they never lived up to their full potential because injuries robbed them of a full-length NBA career. Zion Williamson is a player that many people did not think would be a bust. He came out of college as the number 1 overall pick out of Duke, and people compared him to LeBron James and thought of him as the next generational NBA talent. However, he also had a label of being injury-prone throughout college and was thought of as a liability to the Pelicans when they drafted him because of the potential injuries that he brought. So far in his career, he has lived up to both labels. However, due to how much time he has missed throughout his first 4 years, the term bust has been brought up regarding Zion. It's not because of his lack of talent, which is very apparent when he's been playing in the NBA, but the lack of opportunities to showcase this talent because of how many injuries he's dealt with throughout his career. The injury concerns that Zion had coming out of college have been very evident in the NBA. Zion has missed 194 games throughout his career and has only played in 114 in 4 seasons since being drafted. He missed the entire 2021-2022 season with a foot injury as well. During the time he has played, he's been very successful, averaging 25.8 points per game in the 114 games he's played, and he's shooting 60% from the field in those games. However, because of this inability to stay on the floor, he's being looked at as not necessarily a full-on bust because he is only 23, but he's been being looked at as a potential bust going forward due to the lack of ability to stay on the court. As the saying goes, availability is the best ability. If you only look at Zion's career stats of 25.8 points, 7 rebounds, and nearly 4 assists a game, there's no way you'd think he was a bust. Those are all-star and even all-NBA numbers. However, because he has only played 37% of the possible games his team has played since he was drafted, you have to start thinking about bust status. And recently, he signed a 5-year, $197 million contract, and while his talent definitely warrants the deal, I would have to argue that if I was a general manager, his production up to this point has not earned him this deal. If I was a general manager in the NBA, I would be skeptical about giving Zion a long-term max contract. He's shown flashes of greatness during his time on the court, but those flashes have been few and far between due to the injuries he's dealt with. Every time Zion comes back from an injury, there's optimism that this time will be the time that he finally stays healthy and fulfills his true potential. However, this has not happened yet, and the time is coming where New Orleans will have to make a decision. Do they trade Zion while he still has all-NBA value and they could get a lot for him, multiple first-round picks and maybe an all-star player? Or do they hold out and keep hoping that he eventually fills his all-time potential? If they do trade him and he ends up being a Hall of Fame caliber player, like people think that he can be, they'll look really stupid. But if they hold on to him and continue paying him this massive contract and he ends up only playing around 37% of the games as he's been doing, or even plays under 50% of the games possible to be played, then they'll look like idiots as well because they held on to a guy when they could have traded him for a high value. The draw to Zion throughout his career, even going back to high school, has been his athleticism and explosiveness. He has always been able to bully his way to the basket and then dunk on a big man. The concern with players that rely on athleticism, such as Derrick Rose in the past, is that when a few lower body injuries come, it can take away from that athleticism. Zion has had multiple injuries around his feet, ankles, and knees, and this concerns me because there's a chance that he will come back without the same physical dominance that he has had for the past few years. And with Zion Williamson, it's an interesting case because his shooting has always been suspect. He has very little arc on his shot and very little power with his legs because of the power from his upper body. But when this athleticism eventually fades, whether it be due to old age or due to these injuries that I'm talking about, he's going to have to figure out how to get a jump shot and how to play his game without the dominant athleticism that he's been always able to rely on. And when Derrick Rose had his athleticism taken away from him after his ACL tear a few years ago with the Bulls, he struggled to be able to find a happy medium between his athleticism, which was still somewhat there, and finding a mid-range and a three-point shot and being able to be more of a playmaker and adapt his game to fit his current situation. And I think that Zion Williamson is going to have to do this because if his knee injuries, his ankle injuries, his foot injuries, if they persist, he'll have to figure out a different way to play that doesn't take such a strain on his body. And if he loses even a little bit of the athleticism that he has right now, he'll have to figure out a way to be the same dominant type of player without that same athleticism that he's always been able to rely on. As I'm saying all of this, I want you all to know that I am rooting for Zion. I think he's an incredibly talented player, and he's very fun to watch. I'm not a Pelicans fan, nor was I a Zion fan coming out of college, but I think that he's good for the league, and he's fun to watch. Even when he's playing against my Raptors, I still have it in my heart to almost root for him just because of how much he's dealt with in terms of injuries and off-the-court stuff, and I just want him to do well. His averages throughout his career are incredible, averaging 26, 7, and 4 throughout his career. Those are elite numbers, and when he's on the court, he's a force to be reckoned with. But when he can't stay on the court, it's obviously an issue, and the Pelicans are going to have to deal with this. If I am the Pelicans right now, I have to start seriously thinking about trading him while his value is high. At this very point, you could easily get a top 15 to 20 player for him, as well as multiple first-round picks. I think that Zion, with how old he is, he's only 23, and I think he could get a similar return to what Kevin Durant got for the Brooklyn Nets. So if you're the New Orleans Pelicans, you have to start thinking about trading this man. And I don't want to see it, but if he ends up on a different team that could rejuvenate his career, I think that would be best for both sides, because both the Pelicans and Zion are not getting what they hoped for out of this relationship. And if you could have a fresh start and maybe remain injury-free for a different team, the Pelicans could get back multiple picks and maybe a high-end player or two. And Zion could have a very healthy career where he plays until he's maybe 35, 37 years old. I think that Zion has the potential to follow a LeBron-esque career path, not necessarily with the same level of success, but as he gets older, he develops his game to the point where he can settle for a jump shot, or not even settle for a jump shot. If the drive isn't there, he can maybe take that mid-range or three-point shot, and if you can start hitting that consistently, or even somewhat consistently, if you can be a 35 to 38% shooter from the three-point line, then his athleticism will only be complemented by his shooting. And I think that if that can happen, and if Zion can develop skills outside of his athleticism, that will be a vital skill to him, and it will actually help him to not get injured as much, because sometimes he'll force his way into the lane, and that's when he gets hurt, is when he accidentally steps on a foot, when there's 3 guys in the paint to block him. And if teams know that he's only going to go to the rim and he's only going to go left, then obviously they're going to stop him from going left. But if Zion can develop a jump shot, then also he can pump fake and then go to the rim, and then he can use his insane athleticism to dunk on someone or make a crazy layup around them. So I hope that Zion can figure this out, either whether it be with the Pelicans or with another team. So I hope that both sides get their market value for Zion Williamson, because obviously he's an incredible player on the court, but he just needs to stay healthy. Let me know if you think that Zion is a bust down in the comments below, and if he should be traded to a different team. God bless you all. I hope you have an amazing day, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 100 subscribers by the end of the month, so make sure to subscribe to the channel so I can see that growth. Thank you.